Thank you. Welcome to the April 17th, 2019 Wareham Conservation Commission meeting. Mr. Baptiste, will you do the attendance, please?
Yes, members present, Elisa Hurd, Mary Taggett, myself, Ken Baptiste, Rob Lassen, Chair Sandy Slavin, and the agent David Pichette.
Thank you. We have some continued hearings. Karen Oates. Anybody here for that project?
It's chilling down tonight.
This is the one, and we were waiting for DEP documents and notice of whether or not the Board of Health has approved the septic system.
The engineer had stated that he may be running late to this and asked that if we brought it up before he got here, if we could table it and bring it back up later in the meeting.
I make a recommendation, I make a motion, no, I need a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Next one is a Gary Osmond. Anybody here for that particular project?
We've got a request to continue that hearing to our next meeting, which is,
Osmond?
yes, May 1st.
I need a motion to continue until May 1st.
So moved.
Second?
And I have a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody here for that? Guess not. The next one is Kenneth Nelligan. We did get an email requesting a continuance until May 15th. I'd like to have a motion, please, to continue.
move.
I have a motion. I hear a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, it's continued. Anything on South Coast?
I have not heard anything, so I'm recommending a continuance to the next meeting, which is May 1st.
All right.
So moved.
I have a motion until
Second.
5. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. If I knew this was going to be so quick, I wouldn't have had Mr. White start the recording.
That's right, we can do this right here.
Okay, we have a certification of compliance for Phyllis Upham at 32 Pine Tree Drive.
Good evening. Hello.
Please state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Bill Condon. I'm an attorney in Sandwich, and I'm here on behalf of Phyllis Upham, who is the prior owner and the applicant. And do you wish any historical information at this point, or help me with how the board would like to proceed?
I think we'll hear from Mr. Bichette as to where that, I know, closer to the microphone. We'll hear from Mr. Bichette on the project.
This project site is at 32 Pine Tree Drive, and this project involved the construction of a pier, ramp, and float system at the site. The pier is completed. There was one condition that required float stops on the float, and that initially hadn't been done. The applicant has since put the float stops in, but then when I reviewed it, they did not have the float stops so that they held the float 24 inches off the bottom, which is what was required. It's probably like 5 inches short of that. So I've met with the owner, and they're going to fix that, but it's not quite completed at this point in time. It is something that they can fix, I think, relatively easily. So that's the only issue I had at this point, was just to make sure that was squared away.
Are they coming for the my seat just went down. I'm not shrinking. Is the property about to be sold? Is that why they need their?
The property was sold in November of last year, and this is how it came to light, that we did
Okay,
not
so
have the certificate of compliance.
There's nothing pending from a real estate point of view that needs this immediately?
Well, yes.
I know you'd like to have it, but do you want to wait until the float stops are corrected, or issue it without it?
Well, I'll let him explain why he would What I was gonna say is, it's the board's discretion is how you would want to handle this. You could either approve it and we don't release the document until we know that the float stops have been corrected, or you can wait till the next meeting and then have it done that way, but I'll let.
Sorry. I felt
let
like,
them explain why they are looking to
A
have this
Lannister.
as soon as possible.
sorry. Okay, please.
Thank you. Mrs. Upham was no longer living there. She's now in an assisted living setting. And when we closed, knowing that we had this missing instrument, what we did is we set aside $15,000 until we get the certificate of compliance. Those $15,000 are earmarked for her housing in the assisted living at this point. So is there a pressing need, such as we have a closing? No. But we do have monthly bills that will be coming, and so I would ask the board to issue it as David has suggested, and held in, essentially in escrow until we can confirm and the board can confirm that that has been done. It will be done tomorrow. It's not a particularly difficult fix. What we've got is, if we're shy 5 inches, we essentially measure 5 up and put another cross piece. The cross pieces are there, but apparently they don't measure up. And so it is an easy fix, and it is to be done tomorrow morning with Mr. With Tentora, who is the present owner, and I will be up there with him as well. So I would ask the board to tolerate that. And we don't have the certificate of compliance in our hands until we have manifested compliance with the board.
So the recommendation is,
I'm okay with that, as long as the commission's comfortable with it. It's
that
really
we'll
your call.
hold it, we'll sign it.
I got a
Hold it.
suggestion.
Hold the document
Until-
until.
Yeah, Kenny?
Until I go back and inspect that they've got it correct.
I was thinking of making a motion that we accept the certificate, but David has to inspect it before he makes the final signing.
The release of it.
Yeah, the
So-
release.
So your recommendation is that if we approve this, we sign it, and David holds the signed document until it's proven that it's got a 24-inch stop on it?
Yep.
Now, are you in contact with Phyllis at all?
I am through her daughter. Her daughter is the power of attorney for purposes of Phyllis's business activities and day-to-day activities. So yes.
Thank you. If that is your motion?
Yeah, motion.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Yeah.
And we will sign, and David will hold until, just that, I would like you to let Phyllis Upham know that Sandy Slavin and Alyssa Hurd have asked about her. We are Garden Club members with her for a long, long time, and I loved visiting her house constantly.
Well, I
And
certainly will
pond-
pass that along.
This
Thank
pond
you.
in the front yard, the backyard, it was just special, special, very special woman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've gone through all of the continued hearings. The public hearings can't start until 7:15. I got 5 minutes, so I want to show you. I'll pass the pictures around. We met with Dave Pichette, Dave Menard of the Municipal Maintenance, and Ken Buckland of Planning to talk about the conditions of a section of the Onset Bluff, looking for some canopy raising and treatment and pruning of invasives and safety walks down the steps. So while we were there, we walked the bluffs from the bridge, Point Independence Bridge, all the way down to the pump house. What I'm passing around are pictures of vandalism. The police have been called and it's been reported. Somebody went out there and cut down trees, cut down branches. We have no idea who it is, but the tree was cut down in front of the Peter Gay bench to give a view of Wickett's Island. The branches of the tree were cut down in front of the end of, at Onset Bay, just level with their porch. I don't know who did it. It's just stop cutting the trees. They're there to help protect the bluffs from eroding away. And it's not your property, so stop cutting. And the police have been notified, and it's on file. So.
Who benefits from the view?
I would say people who walk along the bluffs, people who sit on the Peter Gay bench, gets a nice view of Wickett's Island when there's, must have been a 6 to 7 foot pine tree that recently cut down because it was still sapping, still weeping, so it was in the last week. The trees in front of the tree, the limbs are low enough on the tree that it clears a view from the inn at Onset Bay porch. I don't know. I looked around to see who else might be able to benefit from that view, and that was the only ones that came to mind.
Thank you.
Sometimes there might just be vandals who started, not somebody who sits on that bench or whatever.
But it was just, the trees around them weren't cut. I mean, everything, I don't know who cut them. But it seemed odd that a couple weeks prior to this tree being cut down, someone had called about clearing the vista from that bench. So it was just something happened and whatever. I don't know who it was or anything like that, but it's not your trees. Stop cutting them down. And I did visit the Onset bathhouse, and they're well on their way to constructing, pouring the concrete for the interior bunkers. So they've got rebar in place, and they'll be pouring later, so they're on their way.
Is there a need for replanting?
It's hard to replant because you're on the slope. I don't know. I would not. We're very concerned about any work on that slope, whether they maintenance comes up and tries to remove the invasives by digging. You're disturbing the slope. It's all sandy and whatever, and you've got to be very careful about disturbing the plant material along there because it's stable now, and you keep removing and the trees and killing the roots and what like that, and you could find yourself having wash away. There's not so much issue of coming in from the bay because of how it's so protected, but you have the water coming down and flushing down like a little rivulet, and it grows and grows and grows. But so the town will be coming before us with a RDA to do some raising of the canopy of some of the trees, clearing to about 10 feet off the ground, so you can see under the trees, removing some invasives.
Just the trees up on the flat.
On the fluff, yes, on the bluff, so, because some of those are getting into the light pole lights, some of them can hit people walking on the sidewalk. There's a lot of suckers that need to be removed on the base of the trees at the top of the bluff, so that working with the town to try to clear up some of that issue there. And so work on the bluffs will be covered by a notice of intent, but that we're not right there yet. So we agreed with some, easy RDA for some of the cleanup from the bluffs point. And I'm now into 7:15, so first hearing, please.
Public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center at 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass, on Wednesday, April 17th at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for the Town of Wareham, care of GAF Engineering, 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, for the repair of stormwater structures and the replacement of a fuel shutoff valve box located at Assessors Map 2 lots 1006, 0 Point Independence, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette. We'll read to the project.
The project site is at 0 Independence Point, or down at the end of Independence Way in Onset. And the project involves stormwater structure repairs and the replacement of an underground fuel valve box. And this is in the buffer zone to a coastal bank and also within a coastal flood zone. The project proposes to abandon an existing drainage outfall pipe and replace it with a new one that would outfall through the existing bulkhead, but in a new location from where the current one exists. Also, an existing catch basin would be removed and replaced with a new deep sump catch basin, and this is approximately 40 feet from the existing bulkhead. So in terms of improvement of stormwater quality, that's really the only adjustment that's been made. In my opinion, I think there should be some other options explored to improve the water quality from this stormwater system. Beyond that, I did have a question about dewatering for the project, if that's going to be necessary, and if so, where the dewatering area would be identified. We did discuss that a little bit previously, myself and Mr. Rogers on that. And again, also proposed as part of the project is to replace an underground fuel valve box, which connects the gas lines out onto the docks for the Point Independence Yacht Club. And so my only question there was whether or not the fire department's been involved with the review of this part of the project. We do have a DEP file number for this project, but I'd like to hear some discussion about the stormwater quality issues and what options could be available to improve that.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes, Madam Chair. So everything that Dave said, I would agree with. In terms of the dewatering, if you look on the overview plan, in the middle of the right-hand side of the plan, as Dave had requested, we had a meeting before we submitted this filing, so we have located the dewatering up in the lawn area, just above where the fuel storage tanks and the end of the paved parking lot is. So we did do that. The town of Wareham, with the assistance of GAF Engineering and the Director of Planning and Economic Development, Ken Buckland, we're in the process, in terms of town-wide, of complying with the 2016 EPA NIPDES permit, which requires the town of Wareham and all the other municipalities to develop a stormwater management program, and that program is due at the end of June this year. And one of the things that is going to be the result of that program is a prioritization of all of these outfalls. They're all mapped, they're all required to be tested, and they're all going to be prioritized as to the improvements that need to be made in order to comply with the EPA permit, and more importantly, in order to protect and improve the water quality for the town of Wareham. So this project, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of time has passed, about a year and a half. And so there's been extensive discussion between the Point Independence Yacht Club, Mr. Menard, the Director of Municipal Maintenance, and Mr. Sullivan, the town administrator. And so, as Dave correctly says, this represents an improvement over existing conditions. That existing pipe that's corroded is suspected to have caused the undermining at the gatehouse, and the fuel storage, the fuel valve junction box is constantly underwater, and it's pretty rusted. So, you know, we as the design engineers and assisting with the permitting of it, you know, we're asking the input of the town administrator and the director of municipal maintenance as to what is feasible in this location that's within the budget, that doesn't have to be a separate appropriation. And this is what was a result of it, this notice of intent. David and I talked about, is there an ability to provide a further stormwater improvement upstream from this? I don't know how to stop that echo, but, you know, could we do something halfway up Independence Lane, adjacent to that lawn area, where we could collect and infiltrate and take half the water off of this location? The issue is, so this is the physical low point down at the end. It actually, the grade rises up as you get to the bulkhead. And there's a number of utilities. There's the water service, 2 sewer services. You've got a natural gas line. You've got a fuel gas line, gas and diesel, all in this location. And so if money was no object, we would jump on one of these, you know, Vortechnics unit or one of these separating chambers, which are quite large. However, you know, they're 5-foot diameter minimum. Sometimes they're 8 or 9 feet deep. We did one of those in Onset. The installed cost was about $22,000. And so if the commission would like me to go back to Mr. Menard and Mr. Sullivan and come back to the commission in 2 weeks with, you know, an answer on alternatives, I'm happy to do that. But there are hundreds and hundreds of outfalls in the town of Wareham that we're trying to come up with a priority, a list based on location and water quality testing. This, you know, basically it comes out into a portion of Onset Bay where it's a private marina, and you have a lot of boats tied up, and again, the issue is more so with the grade and the distance to water table, and the number of utilities in this location makes it a challenge to, you know, do a better job right at this spot.
Questions from the board?
I wouldn't know what to ask.
I'm confused.
Now, this water is all coming down Point Independence
Well, it's Independence Lane,
Lane,
which is
coming down
town-
Point Independence Lane, coming off of a piece of Onset Ave. It comes from Onset Ave, flows down Independence Lane.
I believe the Onset Avenue drainage stays, you
I
know,
know.
in Onset Ave, but certainly as soon as you come onto Independence
All that comes down the
Lane,
hill.
that's correct.
Everything from the parking lot at Point Independence Yacht Club, the side streets that come into Independence Lane, all flow down there.
Right, and so thankfully, at least from the parking situation, it's a seasonal activity. It's 3 or 4 months during the year. You know, it's not Walmart. But again, as Dave and I discussed, maybe there's an opportunity. I don't know the name of that road, but, you know, it further up and adjacent to the lawn area would be a legitimate spot to capture and infiltrate. But right now, and it's all town-owned land out to mean low water, you know, we're trying to do a repair to the gas valve junction box and the sinkhole, and we're trying to do a legitimate drainage fix in this immediate area.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Bob that right where the catch basin is going to be difficult to put any treatment structures there because of all the utilities. But the other option of moving up the hill, if you will, I think that is a viable thing. I don't think it's going to cost as much as, let's say, a Vortechnics unit, because you don't really need that. You know, you're talking about less expensive structures. So there is options. My point was just that some of these things should be explored so that you don't do a job and then find out after the priority list comes out that, oh, gee, we should have done this while we were here doing this in the first place, you know? And if it turns out that it's going to be too difficult to accomplish anything more, then great, but I think those things need to be looked into first.
Now, who's developing this list of prioritized stormwater fallouts? Oh,
Well, so it's the town of Wareham, primarily Ken Buckland and Derek Sullivan. I don't know, actually.
do you know what the status of that list? Where, if they've started it or finished it or prior?
We have a map and we have ongoing testing, and so we haven't sat down and analyzed that. It's something that Mr. Buckland and I would do with hopefully Mr. Pichette, Bernie Tabor.
Well, why was this one of your first ones to come before us?
Well, more so because there was an issue with the town's drainage and the yacht club claiming, maybe rightly so.
That they're eroding.
The corroded drainage pipe was undermining the gatehouse. And so it was a back and forth. Can you please fix your drainage system? Can you please fix your bulkhead to the yacht club?
So why are we fixing the fuel valve? That's privately owned.
Correct. It's
yeah,
not,
parking lot.
the town's not gonna, the town won't do that. Within the notice of intent, I have a scope of work, and it was a quote from Dependable Petroleum Service. And again, if the commission would like me to verify that they need a permit from the fire department, I will. But the only work that Mr. Menard will be doing would be the drainage work, the replacement of the catch basin, the abandonment of the existing one. The Point Independence Yacht Club will be doing the repair to the sinkhole, anything to do with the gatehouse, and the fuel junction box, the fuel
They
valve.
just included everything in the one notice because it's all within the town road layout.
Correct.
Because it
Yeah.
was located there, yeah.
Now, has anybody contacted the sewer department because they've got 2 manholes right there, whether or not they're going to be looking at the condition of those manholes since you're in the area? Have anybody reached out to them?
I would have to ask Mr. Menard.
Okay.
A lot of times they cooperate with the sewer department that has the Vector truck. And so when we ask Mr. Menard, hey, can you, we can't see the invert on this where the pipe's going for the catch basin.
Yeah, can you bring your camera down and let's take a look? Yeah.
Sure, and the Vector truck and clean it out.
They got the cameras and everything.
Right.
No, my biggest concern is the fact that a lot of what's being mentioned is private, and I don't want the town paying for it. Other than that, as far as the job being done, I've got no problem with that. I just don't want the town footing the bill for a private concern, especially that yacht club, because it's private,
Understood.
Yes.
Is there something we have to do on this notice of public hearing, because it does imply directly that the town is taking care of the replacement of a fuel shut-off valve box?
Yeah.
So that's right on
Well,
this paper, so.
But if you're Dependable Petroleum Service, it's addressed to the Point Independence Yacht Club. I don't think the commission needs to worry about a special condition for who pays for the work.
Okay. Your turn, any questions?
No.
Mary?
I think we definitely look into an alternative. There is that grassy area there. So
Yes, but so the grassy area is several hundred feet up the road, and so that would be a future project.
Because the water doesn't flow to that grassy area, it flows down the road, so you'd want your storm basin to catch as much water coming down the street and the parking area.
Correct. And still stay away from the underground fuel storage tanks. So we're kind of looking at somewhere in, maybe just south of that intersecting street.
Yeah, the basins would be in the road, and then
Put a couple of catch basins, and we would pipe it to the lawn area where we could put some underground chambers.
And I'm saying, I'd like the idea of a better treatment of the stormwater, but I'm also concerned about the financial aspect as to how many other sites are prioritized, and should we put all the money into this project to get a better alternative, or do something that covers some of our problem, addresses some of the problem now and allows us funds to continue to do stormwater mitigation through other sites in town, but I don't know what's high on the priority list. But that's my view.
Right, no, I mean, no, that's exactly what we're working on, and, you know, we're involved, Dave Menard's involved, Dave Pichette, Ken Buckland is kind of driving the bus, and, you know, the town administrator deals with the financial end, and at the end of the day, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen signs off on Wareham's stormwater management program at the end of June.
Yeah, and this site is gonna just be one of numerous sites that's
One of
gonna,
many, many,
that's
many.
gonna need upgrading. So, you're not gonna put all your money into this, because this isn't gonna take nearly as much as all of them are gonna
Yep.
require, so.
I'd rather see the Merchants Way be one of the top priorities for
And
waste,
maybe that will be.
for stormwater mitigation, because right now that just flows right into the river and
Yeah,
other
we-
places that, to me,
We had a meeting a couple of months ago, and that was, you know, with Bernie Tabor, and then natural, and that was a hour and a half of the discussion, the different outfalls behind CVS, at the railroad depot, Merchants Way
Yep.
was a definite.
Yeah, so the amount of money that might be needed to do some of these alternatives is gonna be a relatively small figure compared to some of the other fixes that are gonna need to happen in town. But,
but we're here for this project, we're
Right.
here on this design. Any other questions from the board?
Anything that has to do with the
Since-
private stuff, it's their problem, they can fix it.
Now, this plan was, GAF did it. There was some compensation from the private entity and the town, or was it all footed by the town? I'm sorry, I can't ask the question, nothing to do
No,
with.
no.
No, I don't want to hear an answer, because it's outside of the scope of
Yeah.
conservation. Okay, is there anybody in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none, what would the board like? Do you want, if we're going to continue it, why are we continuing it?
For alternative.
Alternative.
You really want to go down to the design of alternative options?
Does that go hand in hand with waiting for the full list to come out, as the priority list to come out?
That
Is
would-
it the same wait? Can we do,
No.
are we
No.
waiting for the
No.
vote during the same period of time?
and you don't need to go into exhaustive measures to look at these alternatives. There's not gonna be tons of options available here, so, I mean, it's worth looking at a couple, and, I mean, is 2 weeks gonna be that critical to this project?
No, it isn't, but I think that this is the design for this area that solves three issues. And, you know, if I come back in 2 weeks and say the town does or does not want us to provide an additional design,
Then we'll have to
then I
deal with
guess, you know, I would like to say that the notice of intent, the plans, all the survey work is being paid for by Point Independence Yacht Club. And that would not be the case, I guess, if we
Went back
need
for a
to-
redesign?
well, a different design, a separate complementary design.
Do you feel that in this whole process, they've already done some selection of the design, and so that's another reason why maybe not going back and doing it again?
Well, we've had the discussion between myself and Bill Madden, between myself and Mr. Menard, and so I think we all agree on what the goal is, but this is real progress, and then, you know, is it another project on Independence Lane, or is it Merchants Way, or some other neighborhood that, you know, has nitrogen loading issues, or, you know,
The stormwater pipe off of Wankinko in Swiss Beach. I mean, that sits 4 feet out of the water at low tide. I mean, there's stormwater issues along our areas, but
It seems like you've put your best foot forward, and there's not a lot to wait for at this point. There's not a lot of reason to make them come back.
we come back, it's with that other separate project here, or, there'll be many.
Hey, so, I'm gonna,
I would say, let's go today.
okay, so, I see anybody in the audience, I asked, and the answer is no, so, motion to close the hearing, please.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed. What would you prefer? I need someone to make a motion on what to do with the project. Continue it? Oh, I can't continue it. We just closed
No,
the
we just
hearing.
closed the
We're
hearing.
closed the hearing. Ta-da.
It's
Close
J
the-
and A, so, I mean, I'm not arguing the fact that something's gotta be done. I just don't want
Yep.
us
So,
doing it.
I need a motion.
So it was already said that the Point Independence Yacht Club has paid for the design, they've paid for all of the work done thus far.
Correct.
Correct.
So if there are no conditions, it's just a straight up vote, yes or no?
I think so. I think that's where we are. I need someone to make a motion to,
Let's move that.
okay, standard order of conditions?
If you're gonna approve it, then you're gonna wanna include the conditions for dewatering as well.
Oh, I thought it was on the plan.
Yeah, but
Dewatering was on the plan.
Okay, so I need motion and then expand it to include dewatering.
I don't know the language, so
Okay.
throw in the language for me.
So just that your motion is to approve it with standard order conditions plus the requirement for dewatering.
Correct.
That's the motion.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? See
Thank you all.
Mr. Bichette before you start your work.
Certainly. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll come before us with more
Design.
complicated
Cleanup projects.
treatments in the future. Thank you for future projects.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, April 17, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Michelle Stormo, Pharmacanis, Massachusetts, Inc., care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, for the construction of a gravel parking lot located on Assessors Map 47, lots 1124, 1125, and 1126, 50 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. The applicant has asked for a continuation until a date. Did they give us one?
till May 1st.
To May 1st? Is there anybody here that came for this hearing?
Yes.
Will be continued on their request until our May 1st meeting. So there'll be no discussion on it tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just ask procedurally, so, this is conservation.
Yes?
I got that. And so, it's before zoning,
Yes?
and do you guys have to, can you have one without the other? Like, how does it,
Yes, you could. There's two
Okay.
separate processes, so
Okay.
one could approve it without the other approving it. That's correct.
okay, and then it could still go forward? No.
No.
So, yeah, both of them have to approve it in order for it to actually happen.
Okay,
But we're two separate entities with different regulations, and so we're looking at two different issues.
right, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It has to be a yes, yes.
Yes,
in
yes,
order to have a parking lot.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, have a good night.
See you at zoning.
Yes, you will.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, April 17, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Terry and John Dalbus, care of Lockwood Lockwood Architects.
Thank you.
P.O. Box 95, Onset, Mass. 02558, to replace the concrete slab and to enclose an existing elevated pier-type foundation located on Assessors Map 1, Lot 269, 10 Penobscot Way, Wareham, Mass.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Evening, Bill Lockwood, Lockwood Architects, and with me is Terry Diopoulos.
Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Okay, so the project site is at 19 Nobsco Way in the Cremisa area. And the project involves the reconstruction of a foundation slab and enclosing an existing house that's on stilts with breakaway panels to be placed within the existing piers. Again, the work is within the existing footprint of the home. It's not proposed to expand the home beyond its current footprint. It's just to more or less jackhammer out the existing concrete and re-pour a new slab, and then place the breakaway panels in between the columns of the existing home. The only issue I have with something of this nature is typically these things are intended to be open so that water can flow through them in terms of a storm event that might occur when flooding occurs, so that the panels could potentially break away and float away and potentially damage somebody else's property. Those can be strapped to the columns to avoid that problem so that they don't take off. But the other concern is for all kinds of items that might be stored within the enclosed area that are not going to be strapped down. So that's one concern I have, and would just say that the commission should be cautious of types of materials that get stored in an area like that in terms of hazardous materials that could be, exposed during a flood event. But generally speaking, the project is something that's permittable in terms of enclosing that. There's no regulations currently against that. We did not get a DEP file number, though, for this project, so I would have to recommend that we continue the hearing until the next meeting until we get the DEP file number for the project.
Thank you, Mr. Bob, please. Anything else you'd like to add?
We're happy to address any issues or questions that the board might have this evening, so that we can reduce the number of issues to just getting a file number later on.
I guess the first question is, what's the general intent for usage?
It's be used as a garage.
Okay, so there'll be gas cans and motorcycles and quads and whatever can float away. It has a...
Well, I think that those things will be there anyway, and this project will serve to contain them in place more so than without
Sure.
the walls. And if you look at the detail on drawing A2, you will notice that we have included cables to tie the panels to the foundation should they break.
Yep.
Should they break away. And further, we've included flood vents in the breakaway panels so that in the case of a less intensive event, the water can flow through.
Sure.
In and out without actually breaking the panels away.
Yep.
Questions?
Yes, is this property located next to a land preservation area? Right next door, there's a little area, isn't it? Isn't
I
preserved land
I
right
believe you
next
may be
door?
correct.
So,
Between us
so
and Amy?
it would be a lot of damage if, in fact, things like gasoline and all were,
I'm sorry, it'd be a what?
there would be more, the damage would be more significant perhaps if some poisons or gasoline or whatever were thrown out of this area. In the event of a of a storm.
Theoretically.
I would suggest that, you know, that be made a condition. So if the commission ultimately approves this at some point in time, you would want to condition the storage, that they don't store certain things within that area.
And who is going to check on that?
Well, I know that's always a tricky scenario, so,
Can it be it seems like an easy design fix. I mean, if you had an area that it just literally had a bolted down wire cage, that kind of stuff went in, the water would flow through the cage, not take anything with it.
yeah, but it would still be underwater, and potentially if those things weren't watertight, it's, you know what I mean?
I know, it's gonna flow up to my house, is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you're gonna get problems. It's just that when these things are not enclosed, people are less likely to store more stuff in there because stuff will walk away if it's not enclosed and, you know, contained. So I understand the interest in wanting to do that. It's just that the natural result is you get more stuff stored in there than if you didn't.
There not to interrupt, but currently there is a shed on the property.
Right.
Where they store this stuff customarily anyway.
This is mainly just to put the cars in a enclosed space. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. So
I'm,
there will be garage doors on it?
There will be
Yes.
garage doors, yes.
I guess I'm confused. Okay, so you're going to remove the steps that exist there now and relocate them so you can use your new driveway to put one car under there?
Well, one car under that side and another car under the
Yeah.
other side, yes. It opens one additional bay.
Oh, so that the driveway will be as wide as the house is wide?
It'll
am I-
be kind of a V,
Yeah, okay, with this new steps in the middle?
correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm hearing that you have cables and flow panels that will be part of this breakaway, so you'll be cabling and securing it, so if we put them in their order conditions, you've already accommodated that.
Yes.
And items will be placed in the existing garage that could leach nasties into the water? Is that a good way of putting it? Nasties
I'm
being
not sure.
pesticides and oil and gas and will be placed in the existing garage?
In the existing shed?
Shed,
Shed.
and the existing
It
shed.
says existing garage on the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Existing
that's a
garage,
shed.
existing shed, yes.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
existing secondary structure, yes.
So we won't have propane tanks come floating out from
Oh,
under the
no.
house?
We have,
Sorry.
we do have propane tanks, but they
Well, those
also
are
will
big-
be
Those are
cabled
big
down.
ones. Those
Yeah.
are very big ones.
Yes.
Anybody is there any other questions on the board? Anybody in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none.
We're waiting for
DEP number,
Yes, so we'll ask for a continuation, please.
so moved.
I have a motion to continue.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor of continuing, waiting on a DEP document?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, we're continued.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
May 1st?
May 1st.
So the condition won't be lifted until the next meeting, right? Oh, crap.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, April 17, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. On a notice of intent for Rocky Road Realty Trust, care of Outback Engineering, Inc., 105 East Grove Street, Middleborough, Massachusetts, 02346. To construct a duplex located on Assessor's Map 43, lots 1072 and 1074, Lot 4, Minot Avenue, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please come forward and identify yourself. Not the big one, the little one.
Little one's good.
Good evening. I'm Jim Pavlik with Outback Engineering.
Okay. And we're here for lot 4.
Right, so there's actually 3 lots that we filed separate NOIs for,
Hey,
but
Jim, do you have the green cards?
yes. I think we had also scanned these and emailed them to you, Dave, but you just need to read it.
Oh, the whole, these are the returns for these, and you can keep those.
Didn't think they had any butters
Oh, yeah. Yes.
across the street. Oh, yeah.
And
Sorry.
I'm sorry, just a point of clarification too, where we were filing all 3 lots simultaneously, those cards were used for all 3 lots.
Okay, Mr. Bichette will read to the project, then you may have your turn.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so this first notice is for lot number 4 on Minot Ave, and the project involves the construction of a duplex in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland, and also within a coastal flood zone. A 28 by 72-foot duplex is proposed, approximately 45 feet from the edge of the wetland, and also within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. The limit of work for the duplex project is 30 feet from the edge of the wetland. Hay bales and silt fence would be installed along the limit of work line for erosion control. It is also proposed to fill this site fairly significantly and to construct a retaining wall around the construction area to contain the fill. They're proposing to change the grade by approximately 5 to 6 feet. And the retaining wall would be approximately 6 feet in height around that area. So I did have a couple of questions in terms of what is the proposed amount of fill that would be needed for that? And with the height of the wall, is it going to be necessary to require fencing around the top of the wall? The duplex would be serviced by town sewer and water. We did get a DEP file number for the project, but I would recommend that the fill be reduced on the project. It's not typical that we've been wanting to allow 5 or 6 feet of fill on sites, just for the sake of trying to get the house out of the flood zone. So
Drainage in the area.
that's probably the main issue with it. Everything else, I think, meets the setbacks for the project. So that's the only issue I'd like to see addressed on this particular site.
Your turn.
Okay. So, I could give you a general rundown of the layout of the lot and kind of give you some indications as to why.
And if you're going to go up there, then we're not going to be able to hear you. So either bring your little, your map closer to you. Bob, can you hear him? Can you see him if we put them there?
That's probably not going to work either. Okay, well, I'll hold it. So this lot is about 3 acres, and we have a bordering vegetated wetland that cuts through the middle of the site. It appears to have probably been a former cranberry bog of portions of it. And there's a stream channel that runs through there, an intermittent stream. To the back of the site, we have the railroad tracks for the Cape Cod Rail Trail, Cape Cod Rail. And there's also a former pathway through this portion of the site right here that forms a ridge. And the Agawam River is actually probably another 50 feet or so off the page. So the riverfront area forms a 200-foot swath right through here. That's actually due to an inlet. There's a culvert underneath the railroad tracks, so it's just this inlet that would periodically be inundated. But the main riverbank is, again, off the page here. So we have that 200-foot riverfront area. We have the bordering vegetated wetland. And then we also have the area subject to coastal storm flowage, which basically the entire lot is below that elevation. Minot Ave itself is at an elevation of about 11.5 to 12 feet in front of the lot. The flood elevation is 14, so the road itself is about 2.5 feet below that. And so once we put in these setbacks to the wetlands and trying to keep the work outside of the riverfront area, we're left with this area of the lot where we're able to place the structure. And David asked how much fill is going to be required. It's on the order of about 1,200 cubic yards. We are installing a retaining wall on these two sides to keep the work completely out of the riverfront area and to keep the work out of the 30-foot buffer zone. So the only resource area we're doing any work in is within the flood zone. And the amount of fill required is to elevate the structure above that base flood elevation of 14 feet. So we're proposing the finished floor at elevation 16 to provide some freeboard. The surrounding adjacent grade would be 15. And then it would the driveways would just be sloped down to the existing roadway. So we think we've minimized the amount of work within on the lot to try to preserve as much of the wooded area and so on. Again, it's about a 3-acre lot.
Can I ask why you couldn't just do like 2 or 3 feet of fill instead of 6 feet of fill to get the thing level with the road basically and leave it at that?
So the issue with that becomes the flood insurance.
Yeah, but that's not our concern though. That's not a conservation matter. We're just looking at the resource area and the amount of fill that's being placed. Whether there's flood insurance or not isn't relevant to this board.
Okay. We are trying to minimize the amount of fill by putting in the retaining wall.
I'm not, well, it's like I said, it's not even a Concom issue, but I'm not even sure if that eliminates that issue or not. That's something I think that would have to be looked into, but whether it does or it doesn't, in my view, it's a lot of fill for that area when you're talking about changing the grade by 5 to 6 feet. You're going to have this island sticking out of the ground with a 6-foot wall that somebody could take a dive off of if they're not careful,
Well, there would be fencing around the perimeter of that.
But also drain the driveway into the street.
Coming up.
So that driveway would start at the street and go up how many feet to get to the,
Yeah, 2 to 3 feet. It's a relatively gentle slope. It's not a significant slope at all.
there's no, there's
Water
no,
doesn't care.
yeah.
It's still going out in the street.
Yeah, so that's
That's
another.
2 different curb cuts?
Well, it's a duplex.
Yeah, but they share 1 curb cut. Has this been gone before planning or zoning for so many curb cuts on Minot Ave?
There's no requirement for that.
Oh, okay. It's not out of our
Right.
scope of work, it did, but. So if that driveway is impervious, that water will flow down to Minot Ave. Can we talk about the stormwater?
Yes.
The flow of the water off of those driveways would all come down because of the height. Because if you're only going to put in, what is the level of the house without the fill. You want to bring the house up how many feet?
The house, he says, wants to be at 16 feet, right?
And what is it now?
The existing grade on the
Yes.
lot?
Right now,
is-
if the house was,
it-
nothing was to be done.
It varies between 9 and 12, I believe.
So you're bringing it up as much as 6 feet or 6 to 7 feet up
Well,
in the air.
5 to 6.
5
with
to
the-
6,
with
up
For
in
the
the
fill.
air.
With the fill. The house itself would be a little higher than that, yeah.
Yeah, but the foundation of the house would be at that height in order to get it outside of the AE 14 flood zone.
Right.
And that will all drain down into Minot Ave. And I see nothing to accommodate the stormwater flow.
So just to make a clarification, the house has to be at the given height because that's what's required by the building code. The fill does not have to be that high. They're just wanting the fill to be that high. So that's what it boils down to, because it's going to aesthetically be better in terms of filling it more and potentially eliminate flood insurance again, which isn't really our concern. But the amount of fill, as I said, to me is significant there, and in my opinion, should be reduced, or the commission should entertain that, and that will also eliminate the water from flowing out onto Minot Ave.
And it would also reduce the size of the wall is looking at a 14-foot wall? Or did I misread?
No,
the
that's
plan?
elevation 14 feet.
Okay.
Right, you might reduce the wall from being 6 feet to 3 or 4 feet, you know?
But if I take a look at that house, and I take a look at the pink, which is a 30-foot no-work zone, correct?
Yes,
One pink, and the other one is the 100-foot?
yes.
Okay, but the 30-foot no-work zone, that means you don't cut a tree, you don't play in the, or don't alter it in any way, shape, or form, and there's nothing to prevent, other than this wall, from people doing that, thinking it's their backyard and putting in a play set or something like that?
Well, you could place conditions in the order.
Yeah. We would say nothing in the 30-foot
Yeah, so I mean,
no-work.
I don't think it's atypical of any other lot where, you know, the work is being done up to the 30-foot.
Well, we normally put barriers in, stone or some type of barrier to identify the 30-foot no-work zone.
Well, here we have a retaining wall.
Well, you have a retaining wall on two sides.
Right.
Question from the board, I'm sorry, I went off.
So without the fill, you would have to change the style of foundation.
Yes, and the reason, again, for why we're bringing the fill up, as you're probably aware, under the flood insurance guidelines administered by FEMA, there's different types of foundations that can go in, and they all result in different levels of flood insurance. And I understand that's not your concern, but this is what would essentially wind up being the lowest cost, if it's even required. Our hope is to file a letter of map revision based on fill that would remove that building area outside of the flood zone and potentially eliminate flood insurance.
That's a tough lot to build.
Would the flood be coming from the Agawam River? I'm sorry, would the flood be coming from would the water be coming from Agawam River or another water source?
Essentially, it'd be backing up from the river.
From the river?
Yep.
Over the railroad tracks and through the bordering, okay. Questions?
What provisions has been made for the stormwater runoff from those driveways onto Minot Ave?
We haven't put in any special provisions for that, but we could provide some type of a rain garden or infiltration area adjacent to the driveways. We could do something like that.
Kenny?
Would that be easier with one driveway going in as opposed to the two? Having those basins for two as opposed to for one? I mean, are the two driveways what you really need or want or whatever?
Well, we need to provide suitable parking for the duplexes, so I actually had an alternative layout that I thought of presenting tonight, but this is where we'd actually provide a garage at the unit. There'd be no significant change on the layout itself, but we would provide a garage on the interior of the 2 units and then a driveway. So we might be able to reduce some of the impervious area with that. We could also consider doing roof drains if that's another concern of the commission, the amount of runoff from the homes and the driveway. So this was the third lot in the sequence, and the other 2 actually were simpler. I wish we had started from the other end. We're dealing with the most difficult lot right now.
I had seen this one, and I'm saying shoehorn. That's the only thing you could have done, is just, it would have been better if it was a single unit. Because this is a tight fit. Any questions?
I don't know, I have runoff issues.
Me
with
too.
height and, I mean, I realize that the fill is just the least costly way to do it, but why not change the foundation? From our point of view, changing the foundation is a fix to the runoff.
Reducing the slope.
Would bring the driveway, you could leave the driveway at road height instead of pitching the driveway up. You would then park and walk up a couple of stairs instead.
So that would reduce the amount of stairs needed to get into the raised the house.
It would increase the amount of stairs to get into the
Yes.
house. Yeah.
You gotta, yes.
Sorry.
So, I mean, if we were to ask you to reduce the pitch of the driveway, which means you would have to add steps to get into the house if you don't reduce the amount of fill. Did I get that right? Am I right on that?
Well, you'd have to reduce the fill, basically, to get the driveway grade flat, or flatter.
Or-
So that's,
Which probably changes the foundation design.
Yes.
it may or it may not.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. but
I mean, I
it might.
certainly, with all the water in the area, I would certainly like to see something with the gutters and runoff from the house accommodated with some type of underground. I don't want sump pumps, is what I'm saying there, because if I got sump pumps there, they're gonna put them into the sewer system, and that's another level of problem. So I want something that takes a runoff from the house and disperses it around the yard. What's that called?
Like a dry well.
That's it. I knew there was a word I was looking for, dry well, because I'm gonna say no sump pumps.
Dry well is gonna be wet
Yep.
all the time.
It's either that or those sump pumps go in, they hook them to the sewer, and then we've got sewer problems. So it's,
Well, the sump pump is a different matter, because that's usually in the basement hole. You're talking about runoff from the house coming into gutters, going into a dry well.
well, if we don't do something for a type of dry well, which takes the water away from the house, it's gonna seep in the foundations and come into the cellar, which will kick into a sump pump. It has to be pumped back outside into the yard. It's a cycle, a nasty one.
If-
So-
Do you sit on a slab, or is there an actual cellar?
So I'm hearing all your discussion, and I'd like to make a suggestion, if we could continue this and allow me to come back with a revised plan. What I would like to propose is a slab foundation, but so there'd be no basement, no need for a sump pump. We could add a roof drain to accommodate the roof runoff, and we'll look to provide some type of a drainage infiltration feature for the driveway. But I would still be looking to keep the slab elevation, it has to be above the 100-year flood elevation. And we can look to reduce some of that fill, a little bit of the fill for the driveway. But whether it's a slope, if you think of it this way, whether the driveway is sloped like this, or if we reduce the fill like this, it's still going to
Still gonna drain.
slope towards the road, so. But I can look to provide some type of an infiltration area for that driveway runoff.
Board like to continue for some
Yes.
modifications?
Yes.
So I'll take a motion.
Motion to continue for modifications of this plan?
Can you be back by 5:1?
Yes.
Dave, did you want to add something? I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
This is lot 4.
Okay, ready? Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, April 17th, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Rocky Road Realty Trust, care of Outback Engineering, Inc., 165 East Grove Street, Middleborough, Massachusetts, 02346, to construct a duplex located on Assessor's Map 43, lots 1072, 1074, 1070C, Lot 5, Minot Ave, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Just move your easel.
Stop moving your furniture.
That's all right, don't worry about that. It's better than you saying you're holding it.
Okay, so this is lot number 5 on Minot Ave. And this, again, involves the construction of a duplex in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and within a coastal flood zone. For this one, it's a 40 by 64-foot duplex building, with each unit having its own 14 by 24-foot garage, and this would be approximately 72 feet from the edge of the wetland, and also within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. The limit of work for the duplex project is 30 feet from the edge of the wetland. At its nearest point, hay bales again and silt fence would be installed along the limit of work line for erosion control. Again, serviced by sewer and water. The proposed driveways are to be paved, and I had an issue with having the driveways pitch away from the wetland so as not to direct runoff towards the wetland. We do have a DEP file number for this project, so I would recommend the issuance of the order of conditions with the standard conditions and the added condition that no work, including cutting of vegetation, be allowed beyond the limit of work line, and that be a continuing condition, and that the driveways be pitched away from the wetland so that they don't direct water towards the wetland, or that they be a pervious material if that's, the other option is not suitable.
Elevation of these driveways.
Okay, thank you. So again, Jim Pavlik, and so this is the adjacent lot to the other one we were looking at, and as I promised, it's much simpler.
Yeah.
So here, the extent of the 200-foot riverfront area comes up to here, which is on the adjacent lot. So the Agawam River is over 300 feet from the proposed duplex area. We do have this wetland here, 30-foot no-touch zone. And this is the extent of the base flood elevation of 14 feet. So this area is below 14. This portion of the site is above 14. So that's why we're locating the structure in that location outside of the flood zone. And so we're really just cutting in a driveway across the adjacent lot with utilities. And then this is a common driveway for the 2 units. And there's no retaining walls necessary here. So again, work is outside the 30-foot buffer zone, and the structure itself is outside the flood zone completely.
Questions on the board?
I think we have the same problem again, do we not, with the, what elevation is the driveway as it exits the garage to go down to Minot Avenue? We have the same problem again.
Right, so, hearing Dave's suggestion, we could pitch the driveway so it's sloped away from the wetland. That would prevent any runoff from it.
Does put it slope, if I'm correct in that, it puts it sloping toward lot 6?
Yes.
Does that create an issue on lot 6?
No.
We haven't seen that.
It's very sandy soils here, so we're not going to have a runoff issue.
Does it present any issues with the snowplow?
No. The plows would just be, it'd be a gentle pitch on the driveway, so I don't think it would affect the snow plows.
Is the no work zone being marked off so people know not to go into it?
We could provide some type of permanent monumentation if that's your,
Is it,
Sure.
it is wooded now?
I'm sorry?
It is wooded now?
Yes,
And you'd only clear what you need to get the driveway down?
right.
Yeah, the limit of work is the hay bale line there.
Which is this dark line here?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have
the Yep, work that's limit
highlighted in yellow here. Is that me?
Bob, was that me?
No, he's turning it up to try to receive it.
Okay, any other questions on this site? We have two standard order conditions with two additional conditions. Anybody in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none, any other questions on the board? Seeing none, take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion. I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The hearing is closed. I need a motion on the work.
Are we going to be delaying this?
No? We just closed the hearing.
Would it be motion to move with standard conditions
Yes,
plus the pitching of the driveway and what was the other one?
And the maintaining the limit of work into the future, that no work happens
Deeded.
beyond that.
For the 30-foot zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? You got one.
All right, thank you.
Nothing gets started until Mr. Bichette. You talk with him.
Sure. Just point of clarification, so are we talking about putting some type of monuments or a fence or something at the 30-foot work limit, or what's your standard for that?
There's different options, you know, sometimes there's been a split rail fence, something like that, if that's suitable. Other times, people have wanted to put shrub lines in, so just something to identify that, so people understand that they.
20 feet of steel, barbed wire, that kind of thing.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, April 17, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for the town of Wareham, I've got the wrong one.
Yeah.
We'll just put little dots there, and we'll try it again. Let's see.
You have one for lot 6?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Again, it was Rocky Road Realty Trust. Care of
Just,
Outback.
I'm sorry, just a point of clarification. It should be Lot 11, Rocky Road Realty Trust is the actual full name?
Lot 11.
Yes.
As opposed to lot 6?
No, he's saying in terms of the name of.
The name of the entity.
Oh,
That's okay.
Scribner's
Go
error.
ahead.
I just, if you're showing the order, that
Right.
should be the full name, Lot 11, Rocky Road Realty Trust.
Sure.
Lot 11, Rocky Road Realty Trust. Care of Outback Engineering, Inc., 165 East Grove Street, Middleborough, Massachusetts, 02346. To construct a duplex located on Assessor's Map 43, lots 1072, 1074, and 1070C, Lot 6, Minot Ave, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project. Got a little one coming, trade me.
Okay, so this is the next lot adjacent to the one we just reviewed, lot number 6. And again, this project involves the construction of a duplex, which is partially within a coastal flood zone. This one is a 40 by 80 foot duplex building, with each unit having a 24 by 24 foot garage. And this is partially within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. The duplex and garages are outside the buffer zone to the wetland. The duplex, again, would be serviced by town sewer and water. And again, the proposed driveways are to be paved, so I would have a similar recommendation on the pitching of the driveways so that it doesn't go towards the wetlands. We did get a DEP file number for this project, so I would recommend the issuance of the order with the standard conditions and the added conditions relative to the driveway. In this particular site, there's no work in the buffer zone as far as the dwelling. And you have the other driveway and dwelling between this one and the wetlands, so I don't think you need any conditions about limits of work and so forth.
All right, thanks, Dave. So again, this is the simplest lot. And here, we're now furthest away from the Agawam River, closer towards the fire department and Depot Street, if you will. And this is the 14-foot base flood elevation, which encompasses the entire front portion of the lot, whereas the back portion of the lot closest to the railroad tracks is above that 100-year flood elevation of 14 feet. So that's where we're locating the structure. And we just need to cut across the flood zone area with a driveway and the utilities. So, much simpler.
Now, this is next to existing dwelling in the next lot.
Yes.
Is this the area they've been storing all their vehicles on and floods quite frequently and becomes very muddy if I'm looking at this location?
Partially.
Partially. I mean, there's trucks there and there's,
It's like a gravelly gray area now, part of the lot is.
There is a
and people are
gravel.
putting their trucks on it and stuff like that. There's lower,
So that's actually on this lot.
okay.
And the dwelling that you're talking about is right here.
So,
So they
yeah.
have a parking area here. And they've been,
The old TV shop.
I believe they've been using, or someone has
Yeah.
been using that front portion of,
And there's
Our lot
always
in question.
wet there, so, but
That's just a puddle because it
It's just
doesn't
a
drain
puddle.
well because they put gravel there.
yeah. So that's something that the owner of the lot, our lot, has been talking to the people and requesting them to not
so
use this lot for these storage purposes.
is it something that both driveways could be slanted slightly to the middle? In the middle, you give us a rain garden or something?
Sure, absolutely.
Because that does accumulate water in that lower area. Just something to think about. I mean, if we could
We're gonna be looking to actually remove that gravelled area and to reloam and seed it to.
Put in a better type of material.
We're gonna be putting in a row of shrubbery along the edge of the lot line also. So we're looking to restore that area and not keep it as a gravel area.
Right. Just a question. How far is the back of this house from the railroad tracks?
Not far.
So the back lot line is about 70 feet from the dwelling.
And that lot line is the area of the land owned by the railroad.
Right, so the track is actually probably 100 feet or more.
Still pretty early.
Okay, any other questions on the board?
No.
I mean, I would make the recommendation that we slope both driveways sort of to the center and then a sort of type of water retention area. That will probably pick up some that comes off of Lot 5. Because you're going to be putting water from Lot 5 onto Lot 6, correct?
A little bit.
A little bit. Slope of, okay. And by doing that, you can reduce the amount of water that goes onto Minot Ave, because right now, that stormwater drain on Minot Ave sucks. Literally. It's one of the worst holes there. They can't keep it paved. Pothole after pothole. Any other questions on the board?
Question for you. This water retention pool, if you
A
will?
water retention feature or something, yeah.
Feature. Okay, I'm not quite understanding what that's going, what
A
your
slight
mind-
depression
Right.
in it
Keep the
that
water.
becomes
Water.
full of rocks and stuff like that with some plantings in it to sort of help keep the water, keep it from flowing off and then let it seep back into the ground.
We could make a shallow landscaped feature and have it as a
Something-
mulched rain garden type of feature.
And normally some type of grasses or something to say, I'm going to absorb the water as opposed to putting it on the street.
Oh, I understand the
Yeah.
purpose of it.
Okay.
I just was
So, I
curious
mean,
as to
if-
what,
I would like to see it on the plan. So if we can continue. Anybody, no one in the audience for this?
Get a condition?
We could? Or would you prefer to see a plan?
You could make it a condition, because again, this one's really only the issue is the flood zone, and not really the buffer zone to wetlands, with what they're doing, so I would be okay with a condition on this particular one, but it's up to the board. If you would prefer that you want to see it on the plan first, then that's the board's option.
I think a condition would work and it would get them off the docket.
Yes. And do you want to call it a water retention area, a rain garden? I don't want to call it formal rain garden, but a water retention area?
I don't think you can do
Stormwater?
it just like that.
Hmm?
I think that that's sort of ambiguous.
Okay, what would you like to, do you want to call it a name?
Sandy's garden?
Sandy's garden, I don't think so. Okay.
Could- I might suggest a rain garden or infiltration swale-like feature.
I like infiltration swale.
It doesn't need to be a large,
I don't want it a formal
Monstrous thing.
garden.
I'm sorry?
I do not want it a formal garden.
No.
So we'll call it an what's the word?
Infiltration swale.
Swale feature to collect the water runoff from the two sloping driveways, so. I see no one speaking for this, so anybody happy? We'll close the hearing?
Yes.
Your motion is to close the hearing?
Second.
I have a second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstain, the hearing is closed.
All right, thank you very much.
And we need to vote on who wants to take it? I need a motion to approve the project.
To approve the project with standard conditions and the
Infiltration
Infiltration
swale.
swale.
And the two driveways pitching toward it.
And with the driveways pitching toward.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain. Okay, we have one more hearing in front of us. I would like a motion to untable Karen Oates. I need a motion.
Move to
I have a motion. I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. We're untabled. Please come forward and identify yourself.
Darren McHale from Foresight Engineering, here on behalf of Mrs. Oates.
Darren,
Yes.
we tabled you from last year because we hadn't heard from the Board of Health.
Last week, okay.
Last meeting.
It's all right.
Okay.
Late night.
Getting that way.
Yes, I believe we're all approved for the board now.
Okay, so that was one of the questions of the Board of Health, did approve it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so this project site is at 25 Willard Street and involves upgrading a septic system in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. The new system is a nitrogen-reducing system and would replace the existing system. The new leach field would only be approximately 55 feet to the edge of the wetland, and would be slightly raised by approximately 2 feet above the existing grade. So again, we were waiting for Board of Health approval, which has happened, and a DEP file number, which we also have at this point. So I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions for this project. Yep.
Any questions?
Nope.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm glad I could make it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a motion to close the hearing
Second?
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed.
Motion to grant.
I have a motion to grant
Second.
with standard conditions.
Conditions.
Standard conditions, and I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, done.
Thank you. I'll wait for the order and then I'll be in touch with Dave.
Yep, see Mr. Pichette before you start. Thank you. Okay,
Motion to close the meeting?
I have a motion to, is there
Second.
anything else before we, anything else, Mr. Pichette, you want to talk about?
Let's see, I don't believe
Say
so.
no.
I don't believe so.
I have a motion to close the meeting at 8:35. All in favor? Second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye, aye, aye. Thank you, thank you. See you May 1st.